The 18 Strong Podcast, episode number 82.
But at this level, you have to put that extra effort in. And there's so many things in golf that's not under your control that you cannot afford not to take hold of the things that is under your control. And your conditioning is one of those things. And the best performance enhancer you can have is not being injured.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzero.
Hey, what's up? Jeff Pellizzero from the 18 Strong Podcast. And my special guest today is Cornel Driessen, who is the physical therapist and strength and conditioning coach for quite a few golfers on the PGA Tour. Guys like Charl Schwartzel, Henrik Stenson, Ian Poulter, has worked with Rory McIlroy, and currently works with, and has worked with for the past couple of years, a gentleman by the name of Jason Day, who just happens to be the number one ranked golfer in the world and is on quite a tear these days. So we had the opportunity to kind of sneak a peek into the background and behind the scenes with Cornel and working with these guys. And we discussed some of the issues that the backlash from the media revolving around, golfers and strength training, and is it causing more injuries or is it preventing more injuries? So Cornel goes into some great answers and responses to some of those questions. And then we talk about just his protocols and what he does when he looks at an athlete and what they need to work on and what are the most specific and beneficial ways that he can help them optimize their performance amongst all the other pieces of the puzzle that goes into what creates a world champion golfer. I could have easily kept Cornel on the line for another hour to an hour and a half, just picking his brain and peppering him with questions about all of his experiences, all of these guys, and I'm sure there's questions that I am going to realize I wanted to ask that I didn't ask, but I think this is an incredible interview. Cornel is such a great guy and gives such genuine and great responses. I know that you're going to enjoy it. So without further ado, here is my man, Cornel. Cornel, welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to have you on the show today.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here too.
Absolutely. All right, first, a very deep question for you. Are you more of a Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore fan?
It's tough to decide, but Happy Gilmore is one of my favorites.
Happy Gilmore, nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right, and then this one actually is a little bit more kind of introspective. Is there maybe a person or an experience that you've had, or even could be a book that you've read that has kind of had a big influence on who you are today, what you're doing today, and kind of what direction you've taken?
Wow. I won't contribute it to a book. I've more contributed to various people I've met through my middle school career and through university and through my professional career. And it's tough to pin it to one person. No, just can't put it to one person. No.
And are there any specific names that you'd like to throw out there?
Jeff, no, I don't. And if it is names, it would probably be some South African or European names. It won't be American. I've recently been introduced to the US only since 2009, 2008, and I've been doing what I've been doing pretty much since 97, 98, 99. So it's been a long time.
Awesome. So give us a little background on, what you are doing, how you got to where you are, and some of the guys that you're working with these days.
Jeff, I'm a physical therapist in my pre-grad, and then I did post-grad in sports medicine and strength and conditioning, some nutritional background, etc. But I've always been fascinated with the fact that movement is therapy. From the therapeutic standpoint, and even in my clinics, I started moving away from treatment more. I developed athletic screening and conditioning protocols to prevent injuries, and the same thing that reduces your risk injury profile, I call it, is the same things that improves your performance in many various high performance sports. I was lucky enough to have great mentors back in South Africa. I think South African sports medicine is really great. And I opened a clinic down in a town called Stellenbosch in South Africa. And all the Northern Hemisphere Olympic athletes comes to train there. Triathletes, track and field. I've had various world champions that I worked with, Olympic medalists, and I learned a lot from their conditioning coaches, their approaches, from their therapeutic protocols, and I applied my protocols with the conditioning guys, and that's how we got some improvement in performance. And from there came various other sports. I've always been involved with rugby for a very long time in South Africa, field hockey, soccer, or football. You decide what you want to call it. I won't get into that. With a national team and with... can we just pause quickly?
Sure.
Dashy, I'm just recording on a call here. I can't talk to you now, buddy. Sorry, man. Jeff.
Yep.
Can we just pause quickly?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
It's his son and he wants to play.
No problem.
Are you there, Jeff?
I'm here.
Sorry, man.
Oh, no problem, man.
Yeah. So the protocols became very sport specific. For every sport, there's an optimal muscle length, optimal muscle activation pattern, optimal muscle strength pattern in different planes, etc. And from there, started becoming some of the athletics coaches from Europe, knew some of the golfers, and some of the golfers landed in my clinic. And they took me over into Europe on the European tour, and I started there working with a couple of guys. Started with Charl Schwartzel, Richard Sterney in 2008. Then I picked up Rory in September 2008. I think he was 117th in the world ranking then.
Wow.
Yeah, so interesting thing working with Rory, even back then, when he still had he wasn't the shape he was, and now huge imbalances, etc. But he's always had the fast twitch fibers in the hips. He always had the fast hips, strong glutes, and very weak core, and a lot of hypermobility. So with him, a little bit of dynamic and static stability work improved his, not just stability, but also his performance quite a lot. I mean, he didn't change anything. He dropped into the top 20 in the world within 6 months, and from there top 10, and didn't look back. I mean, it could have been just the timing of a lot of other things as well, but it's interesting how you see similar patterns on these guys. You know, the type of player that's hypermobile, and it's got strong legs and hips, generally from playing golf, but doesn't have the core. As soon as you start addressing the core, the shoulder girdle core, the lower core, everything, they just get so much more stable, and they got the tools in the tool bag to do what their talent wants them to do. You know, what the software versus the hardware patterns.
Right.
We're talking about the body's ability versus your movement patterns, your motor neuron patterns. But in any case, yeah, so that's how I got into it. From there, I got approached by different players, and I've been working on the European tour since 2008. Started working exclusively in golf conditioning and therapeutic protocols, and always worked privately. Started with Jason Day 2 years ago, 1 year and a half ago. He had a thumb injury and a back problem, and I picked him up just before at the FedEx Cup 2 years ago. I've worked with Henrik Stenson since 2012, I think. And I mentioned Schwartzel, who I've worked with since 2008.
You've got quite a list there.
Yeah, they're great guys, you know. I mean, it's all them. It's what it is, you know. We all facilitate. At least I'm not messing it up. That's all I can claim, you know, Jeff. I think these guys optimizing their performance is a whole pyramid of building blocks, and you have to have all the blocks. You have the right therapeutic protocol and goals, the right conditioning protocols and goals, the right coaching, the right mental part of it, the right family situation, the right managers. You know, you can have one of those blocks that's not optimal, and they won't perform optimally.
Sure.
So sometimes they've got everything in place, and they add the conditioning, and then wow, the conditioning did it, but it's not. That's just the cherry on the cake, you know. Take any of the other building blocks away and it will fall apart again. So golf is essentially not a team sport, but it also is.
Sure. Yeah, there's so many different pieces that, and you especially see it now with the guys on tour because they do have guys like you and mental coaches and, like you said, the managers. And so there are so many different moving parts that a lot of, obviously most of us don't have that access, but we can still kind of utilize kind of what we talk about is the TPI model a lot is, having your medical or your swing instructor or your fitness person. And you kind of wear a couple of those hats, being the physio and being the trainer, the strength and conditioning, which is a little bit of what I do too. I have my background in physical therapy. So I'm curious, when you're looking at these different protocols and things like that, how do you approach that? And I guess it's different because you're working with these guys individually, but the therapeutic side versus the athletic and performance side, is there much of a difference, or how do you determine when you're working on more of one with the guy versus maybe more the treatment or rehab portion?
You know what? It's all solved for me with the phrase "movement is therapy." If I can explain it that way, many people try and evaluate doing different screens, the functional movement screens, etc., to see are you in a therapeutic category or are you in a training category. There's always, to me, therapy always involves movement and training in any case. So it's just the level where they're at, and it's not just the athlete in a whole. What I like to do is I break it down into different parts, different segments. And then put it back together again. I mean, if it's like taking a car apart and looking where you can optimize which specific parts, and the part that you can make the biggest difference the soonest with the least effort is obviously the first priority, and that's how you prioritize. And then it depends on the athlete. They can maybe have 3 conditioning priorities and 3 treatment protocol priorities that you can address and give it a timeline, and another guy's got the motivation to have 5 addressed at the same time, So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a perfect answer, and giving the insight to look at different pieces, and if there's one that's kind of a glaring issue, tackle that first if that's going to be kind of the biggest domino to set the rest off and kind of improve. Fix that, and you'll start to notice dramatic improvements. Are there certain things with certain of your players that you notice, like differences between the guys, or have you found that because all of your guys are pretty athletic, at least seemingly athletic, strong builds. They're not huge guys. Jason's and Henrik are bigger, and Rory, has a little bit of a smaller frame. How big is Charles? Because I see him on TV, and actually every now and then I think he's Rory just with his build and his posture these days. And it seems like he has put on some pounds from when he won the Masters. So how big of a guy is he?
Well, Charl is interesting. He's also one of those guys with a fast metabolism. So if he puts his effort into the nutritional prescription I give and the exercise prescription, he can be a 10 to 12, 14 pounds different in lean muscle mass athlete than without doing it.
Wow.
So when he won the Masters in 2011, he was quite strong. He might have had a little bit less muscle mass than now, but even on his DEXA scans that I ran those days, his body was perfectly balanced. That's interesting. I can see in the muscle distribution as well. The intercostal muscles around the core, the abs, the lower back extensors, the muscle mass in your hip flexors, the left versus right, your quads, etc. How balanced his body was then. It was literally perfect.
Wow.
It's very interesting. I remember talking to someone about just before that, and I actually spoke to Rory's caddy JP that week that Charl won, and I said to him, Charl's going to take this beginning of the week, and I mean it's just not an outside chance at all, but it's funny. You can see when someone's going to win, or when he's got a chance to win at least. It's very funny.
That's interesting because I know when Jordan Spieth was going into the Masters, I had the chance to talk to Damon Goddard, and he kind of said the same thing. Like, you just kind of saw it. You just kind of knew it, and all the screens, all the tests were looking good, but you just kind of had that feeling that something special was happening too.
That's really interesting. Same thing with Henrik's incredible year when he won the FedEx and the European Tour race to Dubai in 1 year without winning one major event,
That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, interesting thing with Stenson, in the first year, we picked up 8 pounds of lean muscle mass around his core. We're not talking about the big muscle groups, his glutes, these arms, etc. We're talking about the interscapular muscles, the back extensors, the abdominals, the intercostal muscles, etc. On the DEXA scan, which is very significant. I mean, and all of them have changed quite a lot. I mean, Henrik is an incredible athlete. His body responds very quickly. Charl is an incredible athlete, and the same with Jason Day. I mean, and the motivation and the effort these guys put in, it's just that 300% extra effort for that 2-3% extra results. But it's a game of small margins. That's where you get your results from.
I saw the Faraday interview with Jason this past week, and I think some of the things that people don't realize because we don't see the work being put in outside is he was mentioning how when he was younger and he was at the academy, he was getting up on his own, without somebody telling him to do this, getting up at 5 a.m. to go practice his short game. And it's those things that, we don't see as the general public. We just see him go out on the weekend and play very well. But to your point, it's those extra factors that these guys also put in, aside from having some special athletic talent.
Mm. Well, Jeff, I think that the myth that golfers are not athletes has been broken, especially in the last decade. I mean, Tiger has made a huge impact on that. But even if you look all the years back, look at Arnold Palmer's pictures. You can see his lats under his shirt coming through. The whole core. Gary Player is still incredible and very motivational person to meet and speak to. I run into him some here and there, especially in South Africa. But yeah. The guys are athletes, and you can be talented, but at this level, you have to put that extra effort in. And there's so many things in golf that's not under your control that you cannot afford not to take hold of the things that is under your control. And your conditioning is one of those things. And the best performance enhancer you can have is not being injured.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the first thing. If you asked that previous question, how much therapy, how much conditioning, there's always conditioning in my therapy. It always has been, because to me, that is the fact. Matter of fact is, somebody not getting injured is the biggest performance enhancer they could be. And the problem is you don't get an athlete right from when he's a junior or even middle school athlete. You get them when the disc is already a little bit wear and tear. There's little facet spinal issues. There's hip issues, etc. And then you have to first get those injuries under control. And the fact of the matter is, many professional golfers sit with structural degenerative early wear and tear changes in their joints, which they have to manage. And they have to understand it's like getting up and brushing your teeth. You have to do the hip mobility every morning before you go practice. Otherwise, the hips might seize up, the hips are stiff, the back will go, or whatever. So all my guys are different. Every one of them, but there's not one of them that doesn't have one of those things in their body that, because of the millions of golf swings they made, there's been some compromise in their structure. And it's all about balancing that compromise from getting into a full-blown injury and managing that, and getting the body stronger.
I'm glad you brought that point up, because we see so much now in the media and the Golf Channel and all this about these guys and how lifting weight. Some of the media is talking about them lifting weights and how that's causing back issues or that's causing injuries. And let's let you kind of stand on your soapbox a little bit and talk about what kind of training these guys are doing, because I know that some of the backlash is on lifting heavy weights and training like other sports. But to me, when you have someone like yourself, you have a qualified medical professional, medical team, it's more about managing and improving the athletic performance. And if there wasn't this type of training, more injuries may even be occurring. Exactly.
It's not about lifting weights. It's not about swinging a golf club. The way you swing it will injure you or not injury. The way you lift a weight, or when you're ready to lift it, or how heavy, or how frequently, all of those things are factors. And it's training like a diagnosis is an educated guess. You have to screen an athlete, see where he's at, identify the weak points, the weak spots. So as an example, Jason Day, when we started, the back was a big issue, the thumb was a big issue, etc. I won't get into the details of the injuries, but we had to lay off for 3 months after the FedEx and do rehab, and he had to earn his right to lift weights. He didn't lift any heavy weights for the first basically 6 months of us working together. He would not have been able to. If he started doing weightlifting, he would have gotten injured or worse. So yeah, my athletes do lift weights, but they're all conditioned to be able to do that. You first address the stability and the mobility patterns. And once that's in place, then you can add some of the strength and the power. It's like putting a cannon on a canoe. If it's a small little canoe with not enough stability and you shoot it, the canoe is going to sink. And that's what these guys have. Most of these guys come to me and they've got incredible fast twitch fibers in speed generators in their golf, and that brings the golf club to incredible speeds, but they didn't have the core. And that's where you have the degenerative changes. So you first bring the core into balance, or the imbalances between the left and the right side, or the different segments, and then you start addressing more strength patterns and power patterns. So yes, in layman's terms, lifting weights can hurt you if you do it wrong and if you're not prepared and conditioned for it. But all of my guys do lift weights.
And let's talk about Jason's back for a little bit, because just last week, the first round of the WGC, we saw him, cringing, almost going down in pain. And, most people would have thought, okay, he's going to bow out of this tournament, but he ends up going and winning this thing. What did you guys do, and what did he do to help get him through that weekend and allow him to play such phenomenal golf?
You know what, Jeff? It's a slippery slope to answer that question for medical ethics reasons. But what I can tell you is, if Jason Day didn't do all the conditioning and preparation work he has done over the last year and a half, he would not have been able to continue that event. What happens is that if you have an injury like that, there's always a assessment of, is it safe to continue playing or not? Mm-hmm. And if it's safe to continue playing, is it worth? Is there compensation? Are you going to manufacture a swing around the pain or not? And those are the things that you have to address. If that was the case, he wouldn't have continued playing. But he was able to make his full swing. We were able to reduce the inflammation to a point where the muscle firing patterns and the full function was restored. And that's why I decided to keep on playing, and he still won the event. Yeah, that's my answer to it.
I mean, great answer.
The preparation before is what brought him through it. The back of his has been an issue structurally since he was 13 years old. So we do expect at some point that these guys might have these niggles coming back and knocking on them and say, hey, you're playing too much, or your hips is a little tight now. You've just won the previous week and you've been sitting on a bus or an airplane for a while, and you had media, you missed your therapeutic appointments or whatever. Nobody's perfect. It's not a clinical perfect environment where it's like a team environment. Where you have got soccer players or football players saying, listen, everybody comes in now you pee in the cup, we do this, we test that. These guys are multi-million-dollar brands, they're athletes that have a lot of commitments in and around their golf and their preparation for their golf. And this is a balancing act that I think the general public would really appreciate if they knew what these guys have to go through to balance all the factors in their performance and around being a professional golfer, a successful professional golfer.
Yeah, I think there's so many other things that, again, we don't see, the commitments that they have throughout the whole week when they're at an event, plus just the traveling continuously now that the season is so long and basically almost year-round. There's so many different things, sleeping in different beds, sleeping in, a mobile RV or whatever.
Yes.
You can make those things as close to home as possible, but it's never like going home and sleeping in your own bed, and that has to have a huge impact on just the recovery time and the physicalness of their bodies.
Oh yes, I want to say something about like you mentioned this thing with Jason Day and his back. I mean, the manager, incredible. The communication between him, myself, Jason's coach, which is also his caddy, is right there with him. You can see when there's compensation in the swing. You can see if there's anything wrong or right, He's got a great team around him. I reference quite a lot with Doc Jim Bradley. He's the doc for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's a great resource, readily available. All decisions I make, I reference with professionals far better equipped in the field that I'm at. So I've got a what I call a board of advisors, and I'm not scared of calling them and saying, "Listen, this is what I think. Help. What do you say? What do you think?" And it's all about the athlete, not just winning this event, but also the medium and the long term.
Yeah, I mean, just to have those resources to be able to go to and have such an open mind, an open team, people that can give you input and feedback, and then collaboratively make those decisions. Let me ask you, kind of because Jason is the guy of the moment, obviously number one in the world. You're working with some incredible people, but obviously the focus is on him right now in many respects. What's it been like this past year and a half? From the time he won the PGA Championship, which if you were there at that moment, if you could kind of share what that was like. But then over this last year, I mean, he's just been incredible. What is it mentally, too, that he's been doing or been able to tap into that you think has somewhat accounted for some of this success?
Jeff, it's like saying thank you to people at a wedding or at a tournament. You might always leave something or someone out. Mm-hmm. But in Jason's case, I think he's had this great team around him for a long time that knows him really well. And from the conditioning point of view and the therapeutic point of view, it's putting things in perspective. What is this injury, for instance, the thumb that you had? What exactly is it? What can you expect? And it's the unknown that breaks down your mental capacity to deal with adverse circumstances around you. If you put people in perspective and they understand exactly what they can expect, and you're right in what you tell them, there's a trust relationship that develops. And then from a conditioning point of view, is setting small goals, making sure the athlete's motivated enough to be able to do the work they have to do to achieve those goals. And once you achieve a goal, it's like just winning an event. Once you won, you know how it is to win, and you can win again. It builds what I can say memoirs in your mind, saying, listen, I wanted to be able to do this core exercise. My static endurance should have been this, and we set a goal, and he achieves it. And say, well, I do the work, but I get the results, and that motivates you to keep on working. I would say it's setting small goals, dealing with little niggle problems, putting them into perspective, and overall, I think it's Jason's work ethic and his character. I always say about an athlete, there's two kinds. There's the ones that you have to really push to keep going, then the ones that you have to rein in. They're go-getters, and Jason is one of those. Basically, all my guys are. Their compliance to exercise prescription is high above 95% on conditioning programs, protocols they have to do, and on their nutritional guidelines, all those things. I would say they're way above 90. All my successful players do that. And Jason did that. He saw the results. He felt what it did for him. He could see how he got stronger, and that also builds your confidence. It's the same pattern that happened with Henrik Stenson. There's areas in the conditioning in both Charl, Jason, and Henrik's where they improved with 300%, 400% from their baseline on the strength test, which is incredible. That's a lot.
Yeah, you can just physically, you can see that those guys are definitely dedicated to the fitness portion, to just making sure that their body is like a machine that's well tuned and well oiled and ready to perform. Let me ask you this before we kind of close out here: what has you most excited going into? We're about ready to hit the Masters next week. Just for this upcoming season, for what you have going on, all of your players, and kind of what's your mission for 2016?
It's optimizing my guys' performance. I feel like I'm partnering with them, and I think they see it the same way. They are the guys with the talent, and they have to put in the hard work. I put in a lot of hard work as well, but I'm basically just telling them how hard to work and when, how hard and how smart to work. I'm very excited because, especially Schwartzel, end of last year, he just said to me, Cornel, I'm ready. And we brought back certain things that you used to do 3-4 years ago. Things in his life changed a lot, moved from basically based in England or South Africa to the US. and got a baby and all those other things. And he just got his love for the game back and his motivation. So he went into the bushveld in South Africa on a holiday, and normally I don't even hear from him. He kept on calling me. I had to write him a program where he could do pull-ups with his TRX against a tree and go on a bike and on the loose ground in the field on cycling intervals. And I mean, he just trained over his holidays, and he had a good rest, and he came back motivated. I said to him, "Listen, I'm so excited for your year," and he's won 1, 2, 3 times in the last couple of months. And I mean, in the end of last year in South Africa, he started winning again. And the same with Henrik. He's just working really hard. He's motivated. He's came second so many times. I mean, he's so frustrated with coming second in the last couple of 18 months. And the breakthrough will come. And the same with Jason. I'm very, very excited because they put in the hard work. It's an absolute pleasure to work with people like that. You know, that you can see the results of the effort you put in, and you see the reward that they sow and they reap the benefit of their hard work.
Well, it seems to me when a guy like Charl finds the love for the game again, it looks like Jason, you see the smile on their faces, and you see Henrik, and when they find that love again, it's no longer work, and that's when a guy becomes dangerous because he's out there enjoying himself and most likely playing his best golf.
Oh yes, I totally agree with you. All my players that won a major event, I can tell you there's one common factor in all of them. They were happy. They were truly happy. And they were just excited and happy.
That's a pretty profound statement there. All right, one last question here. And this is kind of a deep one. If you had the chance to play a round of golf or just walk 18 holes with somebody past or present in the world of golf, who would it be and why?
Wow.
I know, I just kind of threw that right at you with no preparation, but
you know what? Not a round of golf, but I would have liked to be at a practice session with Tiger and his dad before he broke through and became this worldwide sensation. I would have just liked to see what that relationship was like and what they did. I mean, Tiger has been texting with Jason quite a lot recently, and they became friends in that respect, and it's very motivational for Jason. It's like a mentor relationship, but Jason still takes his own out of whatever Tiger tells him. He doesn't just copy, but there's a mentor relationship that it looks like it's developing. Although Jason is a man in his own right and makes his own choices. But it would have been really interesting to walk around of golf with Tiger and his dad before he broke through and to see what that relationship was like.
What a great answer. All right, any last pieces of advice for the audience, and then let them know where they can maybe follow you or find you on social media?
Jeff, thank you for having me. I think I'm very motivated and work hard at what I do, and I'm not messing it up, but social media I'm not great at. My wife's always on my case about it. But yeah, I've got a Twitter account at Cornel Golf, and yeah, that's basically it. I'm not big on social media. I focus down in the trenches here and what I'm doing. This is my main focus is the work I do with my guys.
So great. Well, Cornel, I can't thank you enough for taking the time, and it's just been an honor chatting with you and just connecting with you over the past year or so. And I know that you are a very, very busy man, so thanks for taking the time out of your schedule.
Jeff, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for hunting me down. I must encourage you. You're really doing great work, putting all these podcasts on and keeping an open mind. I think you do golf and the industry of golf justice with what you do. Bringing this to the general public. I mean, that's what golf is about. These players wouldn't have had the monies they had if it wasn't for the public and the public interest into it, and you contributing to that. Thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate those very, very kind words, and we look forward to what you and your guys are doing in the future, and I got a feeling there's some major championships in the very near future for you guys.
I pray that would be the case, Jeff.
All right, take care, Cornel.
You too, bye-bye.
I always think it's so cool to be able to talk to somebody like Cornel, who has a direct connection and is with these guys every day, guys that, we see on TV every weekend, always at the top of the list, top of the charts, and kids are idolizing them. But, we get a glimpse, we get a behind-the-scenes look at what's going on. What are these guys working with? What are they struggling with? And where do they put their emphasis, and how hard they work to do the things they do and to win the way that they win. So, Cornel, I want to thank you again for your time. It was a great conversation. And speaking of behind the scenes, how about that little cameo appearance earlier on? If you didn't figure that out, that was Jason's son, Dash, with a little bit of a kind of like a photo bomb. I'll call it a pod bomb. And maybe that was his first podcast appearance. Who knows? On the 18 Strong podcast. If you want any more info on the show or you want the show notes, just head on over to 18strong.com and you can search in the search bar for Cornel, Cornel, and you'll find him. It'll pop right up, and we'll have all the notes and any links that we mentioned in the show. And if you're new to 18 Strong, browse around a little bit. We've got tons of videos. We've got tons of podcast interviews. This is our 82nd interview on the 18 Strong podcast, so some great guests on there. So browse around a little bit, and we would greatly appreciate any ratings, reviews over on iTunes. If you've been listening to the show for a while, what are you waiting for? Go on over, give us a little rating, review. Everything that you guys do on there, everything you say on there helps to spread the word of the 18 Strong podcast so we can get more great guests like Cornel and some of the incredible ones that we've got up our sleeve over the next couple of weeks, which I'm very excited about. Thanks again for joining me. Until next time, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.